All right, well, let's go ahead and get started, and people can keep joining in, and everyone's free to keep dropping in their beer as we go. There's no problem. Um, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited and so honored to be moderating this webinar between two of our Compact member companies. We have Cherry Street Energy here, represented by Sarah McMillan, who's the enterprise account executive, and then we have Creature Comforts Brewing Company, represented by Jacob Yarbrough, senior sustainability it. But before that, let me go ahead and introduce myself and also tell you a little bit about the organization that I am representing. So I am Tatiksha Fernandez, program manager at the Ray C. Anderson Center for Sustainable Business at the Scheller College of Business within Georgia Tech. And to make that a little more complicated and longer, within the center, we have the Drawdown Georgia Business Compact, which was launched 3 years ago. So just to take a step back and tell you a little bit about the compact, if you're familiar with Project Drawdown, which was a global effort to identify 100 solutions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, Drawdown Georgia kind of took inspiration from that and identified about 20 solutions to reduce emissions in the state of Georgia specifically. Um, the researchers behind this work represented many academic institutions and research organizations across the state, of course, including Georgia Tech, UGA, Georgia State, Emory University. Once the research was done, I think the team recognized that these solutions could not be executed without the full participation from industry. And thus, we have the compact, which leverages the collective impact of the Georgia business community to achieve net zero carbon emissions in the state, with justice and equity as kind of like underpinning theme across all of the initiatives. And just to list some of the initiatives that we're currently working on, there's clean energy, which you're going to hear about today as well. There's transportation, forest carbon, material circularity, sustainable aviation fuel, food and agriculture. So a bunch of initiatives that we work on, collectively with all of our member companies. And then we also have partners, which are represented by nonprofit organizations across our state or academic bodies or research bodies, as well. So the compact has four kind of foundational pillars that it operates around. And if you see that on your screen in front of you, so facilitating collaboration, we look for opportunities to connect our members with partners. Again, partners are academic institutions or nonprofit bodies that are working in this space, catalyzing innovations, coming up with project ideas, brokering different innovative solutions to reducing emissions, creating a community of practice. The webinar we're in right now is a perfect example of that, bringing together our partners that are our members that are working with each other, but making this a space for knowledge exchange, best practices, and hopefully, some of you will hear both Jacob and Sarah today, and maybe follow suit, like you want to partner with Cherry Street in the future. And then reporting on progress. So, we do want to see what kind of impact some of these collective solutions are having within the state. So we are only in year 3, but the idea is to track all these metrics. How much are we reducing emissions by in the state? Broad working pillars that we have within the compact. If you are interested to learn more or become a member or partner, I will drop the link to the website and my email in the chat box. Definitely feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to talk to you more about this. Moving on to the main portion of our webinar, I will turn it over to Sarah, who will tell us more about Cherry Street and their partnership with Creature Comforts. Please feel free to drop questions and comments in the chat. As we go, we will have some time towards the end to address your question and answers. Thank you so much, and over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we're very happy to be here as part of Compact and, of course, as a partner with Creature Comforts. But I'm Sarah McMillan, and I'm representing Cherry Street today and have the pleasure of being the account manager for Creature Comforts. But just to give you a little bit of background about Cherry Street and exactly what we do, we're really just simply a renewable power company focused on solar energy. And our CEO and founder, Michael Channing, created our company back in 2015. In 2015, the law in Georgia changed to allow the third party sale of electricity, and that's exactly what we do. And he created the company as a solution based company to take the hurdles out of incorporating renewable energy and make it really simple for clients to both gain sustainability goals and hedge against rising utility rates. So we do everything start to finish for our customers, and we have the luxury of being vertically integrated, which just means we can be very collaborative with our customers. We do everything start to finish from the design and construction, and then we also keep up with the maintenance thereafter. And we simply charge the client for the energy produced by the system. So it's a very straightforward model and probably the simplest bill that they get. It is our agreed upon rate times the kilowatt hours produced by that system equals your bill. So it's a very good way on the financial side to hedge against, again, rising utility costs and have some cost containment to know exactly what that portion of energy is going to cost over the length of our terms. And then we've had a wonderful partnership with Creature Comforts and others. Our first partner was Macon-Bibb County. That is again where Michael Chanin, our CEO, is from. He went back to his hometown and talked to the mayor there. And we got our start with municipalities. City of Atlanta followed soon after. And then we started branching off into manufacturing. So Creature Comforts was one of those early customers of ours. And then we've expanded that to other clients like Gulfstream Aviation, Delta Airlines, Synovus. So you can see we have a wide range of clients, and we can help a customer really navigate how to manage a portfolio if they have multiple businesses or a really large energy consumer. Again, we're really the experts there, and so we're able to supply those solutions for our clients. So that's kind of an overview. Of course, I welcome any questions that you have in general about Cherry Street, or we can always follow up after, but I'm excited to turn it over to Jacob at Creature Comforts and give you an example of how he's used us to help him achieve some of his sustainability goals, and go into a little more depth about how Creature Comforts has gone down that path.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Sarah. I'd like to get started
Yeah.
by introducing Creature Comforts Brewing Company just a bit. Chances are, if you are a craft beer fan who lives in the state of Georgia, you've probably heard of us. But I'm going to give you a quick overview, a bit of our founding story before I go into how we're reducing our emissions. So we got started the year before Cherry Street. We were on the street first. We were founded in 2014 in good old Athens, Georgia. We started off downtown in the old snow tire mechanic shop with a 30-barrel brew house. What is a barrel? That is, one barrel is equal to 31 gallons. Why is it equal to 31 gallons? It's a British unit of measurement. You should ask them. But for better context, one barrel is equal to two full-size kegs. So we started off with the capacity to brew about 60 kegs worth of beer at a time. In that very first year, right, we did about 1,200 barrels worth of brewing and packaging, and the market responded really strongly to our product. We grew a lot. For multiple years, we were one of the top 10 growth breweries in the entire country. So now we are closing down at 78,000 barrels 10 years later. So that is just, it's been an insane period of growth. I have been with the company all 10 of those years. I've done a number of different jobs within the brewery. I got hired as a tasting room staff member, gave tours. I worked my way up through the packaging line, up through the cellar, eventually to the brew house. So I have wide experience in a number of different operations within the business. And I always advocated for sustainability and sustainable practices in the brew house and in production. You know, we always had a philosophy that we wanted to make the highest quality beer possible. And to that statement, I added a secondary piece to let's make the highest quality beer as efficiently as possible, right? So I'm really excited to talk a little bit about some emissions reduction strategies that we have undertaken at Creature Comforts over the last 3 years or so. We've really had a focused effort on our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. I'm not going to go into details about what we've achieved so far. This is more of a kind of philosophy of emissions reduction. Sourcing clean energy through our partnership with Cherry Street Energy is absolutely a part of that. But we also do a lot of planning, goal setting, and demand side management, right? So we view emissions reduction as taking care of what's in our house, and then also making sure that we are working with partners who share our same values. So we are now one of the top 35 breweries in the country, but we're still only available in 4 states, which is kind of wild to think. Like the markets that we are in absolutely love us. And when it comes to tracking, next slide, please. Our production metrics, we track a few different KPIs, these key performance indicators that let us know how we are doing. And these are, for us, expressed as ratios, right? So production of beer, that has the biggest impact on our footprint. And so in all of our key performance indicators, we are tracking things like electricity in the form of kilowatt hours used. We are tracking water in terms of how many gallons we use. There's an old joke that says, hey, say water, drink beer. It's not true. I wish it was. We use on average about 4.8 units of water to make 1 unit of beer. We also track how much natural gas we utilize. We need to boil our product, right? So natural gas is a big part of our supply chain. Also, we track how much carbon dioxide we use. Believe it or not, it's pretty common in the brewing industry and in food production generally that gases like carbon dioxide are used directly in the process. So we feel like we need to be very good stewards of how much carbon dioxide we use. And so that goes into our KPI matrix. Also, we're tracking how much solid waste we are generating. Our production facility is a certified zero waste facility. We were the first facility to get that zero waste certification in the city of Athens. So we're very proud of the work that we do on multiple fronts. A bit about KPIs. I find that they are very helpful for tracking your performance over time, right? They let you know how you're doing as months change, as seasons change. And typically, when we got started, we would track these KPIs on a monthly basis. However, I personally find that that isn't fresh enough information. So one of my key pieces for things like demand side management, reducing your emissions, track your KPI metrics as you should update them as frequently as possible. So something we've been taking a look at and implementing in our facilities are sub-metering systems to take a look at resources as we are using them. We're able to answer so many more questions because we have electricity sub-metering in our facilities. So tracking those KPIs lets you know how you're doing over time. The fresher the information, the better the information. And if possible in your industry, you should consider benchmarking your performance against your competitors. I know it's not possible for everybody, right? Most companies, most industries have trade secrets, don't really want to share information. I am very fortunate that the brewing industry tends to be very, very collaborative. So I can actually work with other breweries. We can kind of anonymously compare notes about how we're doing through our national trade organization, the Brewers Association of America. So if there is a trade organization that represents your industry, they may be able to start a benchmarking program for you. It's incredibly valuable because while key performance indicators tell you how you're doing over time, benchmarking tells you how you're doing relative to your peers. So you'll know whether you're doing better or worse than a competitor through benchmarking. And that is just really, really valuable information. Next slide, please. Of course, right, once you've got this information tracking and you kind of know a little bit about your own history, now you're ready to start setting some goals. For example, a goal that we have been following that we're about to complete right now, back in 2021, we wanted to set a carbon emissions reduction goal. We focused on scope 1 and scope 2, those in-house emissions that we could take care of. And we decided, hey, what's a good number for reduction? I don't know, let's try to get 5% from a 2020 baseline. From there, that is a number that is independent of company growth, right? That's an absolute value. And so we wanted to make sure, we were planning on growing, so we needed to actually really stretch pretty hard to hit that goal. And so I'm kind of proud to announce here, we're going to be dropping our per barrel carbon emissions, scope 1 and scope 2, by closer to 50% to hit this goal because we have grown by 40% in that time frame. So we needed to do this. Now, that's a hard goal, right? We managed to achieve it, but it took a lot of work. And the points that I have up on the screen here are key, right? A good goal should be difficult to set. You should take time to think about it, to really consider what the implications of that goal for your organization, what it takes to get there. Also, really, really importantly, right? Collaboration with organization leadership is incredibly valuable, right? If you've got a CEO or a chief production officer, like as a sustainability professional, you need to be talking to them and knowing exactly what's going on. At the same time, though, right, once a goal is set, it's not necessarily set in stone. You shouldn't be chasing a goal that's bad when you've realized it's bad. I have had to throw away a number of goals in my career. It's, it hurts a little bit at the first time, but it's better than wasting time, right? So don't be afraid to abandon bad goals is one big piece of information that I have. And next slide, please. All right, so really key here, right? I am somebody who wants to make improvements all the time. I want us to get to net zero. I want us to be, the best brewery, use as little water as possible. But I do have to recognize that I am one individual in a larger organization. And so a key piece of advice that I have for anybody who is setting goals to reduce carbon emissions, they need to be aligned with company goals. You can't really achieve things that are stretching against what your company is trying to achieve. And I've got an example from my career, right? When we first started tracking some of these KPIs back in 2017, 2018 era, we're like, man, let's tie them to the barrel production and let's just try to reduce across the board. Let's reduce the pounds of CO2 per barrel. Let's reduce the kilowatt hours per barrel. Let's reduce the natural gas use per barrel. But I kind of ran into some conflict here. Is particularly this year, our company was growing. We outgrew our warehouse space. And so we needed to kind of purchase and rent an offsite warehouse. Well, an offsite warehouse needs electricity. And so a company goal of reducing kilowatt hour per barrel gets spiked, right? If you have to open up a new facility. So it's important to know what your company is trying to do. And so you can kind of work on your goals and refine those, right? So instead of just a simple kilowatt hour per barrel goal, I found much more value in identifying a goal that targeted waste. And the waste that we identified specifically was to eliminate 90% of leaking compressed air. So there's a couple of things that go in here, right? If you've got an air compressor in your organization, that compressed air needs to do work for you. If it's leaving your system through faulty connections or something like that, that's wasted electricity, right? So if you can focus on wasted electricity as a proxy, you're going to improve your metrics. You're going to focus on something that will be valuable for your company and still allow your company to grow according to their plan. So again, make sure that the goals are in alignment with your company plans. Next slide, please. All right, so I talked about a wasteful practice, right? And the wasteful practice that I mentioned was the leaking compressed air. So I want to talk a bit about how to identify some wasteful practices. Of course, leaking compressed air is a big one in any kind of facility that has an air compressor, but it's not always easy to find waste. If it was easy to find and identify and eliminate waste, it would already be done, right? Fortunately, there are a ton of resources and a ton of potential avenues for ways for you to find waste in your organization. One of the things that I find most valuable is just straight up talking to people who work with you, right? Like people who work in different jobs, different departments, different locations. Like if they can tell you a bit about their day-to-day and where they see waste. I mean, I'm working in an organization, sustainability manager for a company that's got more than 130 employees. I can't be in 130 different workspaces. I need to talk to people to find out what's going on the ground. Also, by talking to the people who are doing the work, I know what kind of limitations and frustrations that they are experiencing. And so that helps me kind of tailor goals that make their lives a bit easier, right? So conversation with staff, that is my number one recommendation about finding and identifying waste. However, there are also academic resources that you can turn to. The Drawdown Georgia Business Compact, right? Tatiksha mentioned at the beginning of this webinar that this group does exist for collaboration, for providing resources, right? The Drawdown Georgia project identified different ways that we could bring the state of Georgia to lower carbon emissions overall. And well, business plays a large role in that. So the Drawdown Georgia Business Compact, they're here to help. I personally have contacted different people here about different problems and ideas. They've been incredibly helpful. Also, industry trade groups, whatever industry that you are working in, there's a ton of value in going to experts within your industry. In my experience, again, maybe it's a bit different in the brewing industry, but they've been incredibly collaborative and helpful. Also, the government, government is super helpful when it comes to demand side management. Believe it or not, the US Department of Energy has a ton of resources. Also, the Environmental Protection Agency, lots of resources on how to prevent carbon emissions from happening. And if you're working in a manufacturing setting, like a brewing at scale, the Georgia Manufacturing Extension Partnership, fantastic. They conducted an industrial assessment center of our facility back in 2021, and they gave us just a prescription of things that we could do to implement to have some savings there. Also, there are things known as common energy conservation opportunities that can apply to your organization. I'm a big fan of this book. The title is blurred, but it is the Energy Management Handbook. It's got tons and tons of things in there. There are people, energy management professionals, who have already done this work. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to find out where the hub is. Next slide, please. Right. So when it comes to reducing carbon emissions, right, I find that really you want to have the strategy of having clean energy, which we've done through our partnership with Cherry Street Energy, but also the demand side is huge for us, right? When it comes to acquiring clean energy, this is an investment, right? Whichever way your organization prefers to do it, whether that's through RECs, renewable energy credits, whether that's through a VPPA, a virtual power purchase agreement, or a SEPA, a solar energy purchase agreement, these costs, you need to consider your bottom line when you're investing in them. However, if you're focusing on energy efficiency and eliminating waste, those dollars go farther, right? And I can tell you, I have gotten a lot of trust from our management team, from our executive team, because I've been able to deliver on projects that eliminate waste, lower costs, and also boost our sustainability reputation. So sustainability as a discipline here is really, really valuable for organizations. I just really want to highlight again, energy efficiency, it's super well worth the effort. If you've never done work with energy efficiency, it can be really intimidating, but there are a ton of resources out there to help you out and to help you get started. So yeah, next slide, and I think I'll hand it over to, oh yeah, this is why. So talking through benefits of SEPAs here, solar energy goes direct to your facility. Sarah mentioned at the top of the conversation, right, Cherry Street is a good partner to work with. We get that energy directly to us. So there is very low line losses on this, which is something that's different when trying to source renewable electricity from far away. Some of it gets lost in transit. Also, you can usually get that electricity for a lower cost, just straight up. It's nice to get clean energy for cheaper. And zero upfront cost to the purchaser of the electricity. In this case, it would be Creature Comforts. So that enabled us to get the renewable electricity through on-site solar panels much faster, much sooner than we would have been able to had we had to invest in that ourselves. I want to highlight a few reasons why we chose Cherry Street to do partner with in our SEPAs. We evaluated a few different proposals. Everybody had, tables and lines of, hey, this is what it's going to look like over the next 30 years. Here's, the amount of power you're going to generate. Here's the amount of electricity that you're going to save. And so something that we did with those proposals, when we got them, we took them to the NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. It's a government website. They can provide you with data about your address and how much solar radiance you get, right? So you can plug in information from the proposals, like, the proposed kilowatt size of the array, the location, and you can actually see tables of how much electricity the NREL expects your facility to generate. And of the proposals that we received, Cherry Street was closest to what the NREL told us. While it was one of the more modest proposals, it was also the one that we could independently verify. So that kind of modesty and accuracy we found to be very valuable in a partnership. And also, when it comes through the process of actually going through all of the work, because it takes a bit of work to get one of these facilities designed, built, and energized, Cherry Street has been a very flexible partner for us, very responsive. We've had to work with landlords. We've had to work with different buildings. I don't know if you can see the building in the bottom of the picture here. This is our downtown tasting room. We wanted to get the solar array on the actual building itself. It's curved, it's an old building. Our landlord was not interested in that, so we wound up building a pavilion on the side. But throughout that entire process, we were in communication with Cherry Street. They were very flexible, and so it was a good partnership all around. We've been working together now, going back to 2020 or so. These folks also have a really deep knowledge of electricity generation and the regulations in Georgia, so they are a great partner for helping somebody who wants solar electricity but doesn't know how to get it done. Very helpful on that front. And with that, Sarah, I think I'll turn it back over to you to talk about our systems.
Yeah, sure. That was great, Jacob. Thanks a lot. And thanks for sharing that. And that's again exactly what Cherry Street means to be for our clients, a solution, making it easy, taking away the big hurdles, which are really number one, always the capital expenditure. And number two, like you said, the expertise, the navigating, who keeps up with the system after, and having just one centralized person to call for that as well. So here is the system, the rooftop system there at the mill, at their production site. And below are just the stats for the lifetime generation of the system. So again, like Jacob said, this was energized right after, our initial introduction to Creature Comfort. So in 2021, and since then we've been able to produce 653 megawatt hours of the production there. You'll see the metric tons of carbon offset. And just to translate that, and this is where our wonderful marketing team can really come into play and really help our clients tell the story and what is meaningful for them, but to give a basis to their customers of what their solar system is doing, how it's producing, and how that might relate to their lives. So these are just two examples of what that could look like. So this would typically power about 60 homes or charge over 30 billion cell phones. So and thanks again. And then, as Jacob just showed this too, but we also have a really great system here at their tap room. And this showcases too, again, our ability to be collaborative with the customer and work with them on where is the best spot to put solar, what makes sense. Should we do a rooftop? Is there ground space available? Do we want to do some type of parking canopy? Even at Porsche Cars North America, we have a one-of-a-kind walkway that goes from one end of their campus to the other that we totally custom designed for them. So this is another example of that. As Jacob said, they built this pavilion so they would have that outside, which makes a really nice spot for customers too. I think it was a win-win all around, but a really great spot to place solar and to showcase it as well. So their customers can see this and to see how big sustainability is to them and what they've done to achieve that. But again, these at the bottom, so this has produced 114 megawatt hours of production over the lifetime of the system, offsetting about 80 metric tons of carbon, powering 10.4 million homes. I think that's million, and over 5 million smartphones. So, but thank you all for having us again. And we'll show a video now of just going through this. But if you have any questions after, please let us know.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Jacob and Sarah, for sharing your journey, your work, and your partnership with each other. I think this is really cool. And then Jacob, of course, thank you for the additional tips and tricks on sustainability and all the different resources that are available for people to utilize. I do want to open this up for questions. If anyone has one, please feel free to come off mute or drop the question in the chat, or even if you have a comment, more than welcome. And while we're waiting on folks to, okay, we have a question. Let me Okay, from Daniel, what has the maintenance and upkeep been like over the years? Have there been any issues?
So, Sarah, I think you are qualified to answer this question.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. So part of our agreements, again, we agree upon a kilowatt hour rate over our agreements, and that includes ongoing maintenance and operations. So we do routine maintenance. So we come out and check the panels once or twice a year, look at the wiring, we wash the panels. Also, our director of O&M is maybe the most detailed person in the best way that I have encountered in the workspace. But he is constantly monitoring these panels and looking at the production. If there's anything that a panel is not producing as it should, we're on site quickly to fix it. And remember, we're highly incentivized to do that because Cherry Street is not paid if the system is not producing. So that also benefits our customer. So it's a very kind of thorough circular process. And we usually reach out to our clients before they even know that something's wrong with the system. But they also, besides maybe Jacob, because he's very thorough and monitors the system as well in great detail. But you'll also have all our clients have access to a monitoring platform where they can see exactly, what their panels are producing. And then that lines up with the billing information as well. So just a very transparent, easy, simple process.
No. Um, well, I have a question, and I think Sarah, you maybe will be able to answer this one. Jacob touched upon SEPAs a little bit. Can you talk a little bit more, about SEPAs and how exactly they work in Georgia specifically?
Sure. And I mentioned early on that our business was created in 2015 when the law changed in Georgia. And the term SEPA is specifically for Georgia, and it stands for Solar Energy Procurement Agreement. Some of you may be familiar with the term PPA, which is a power purchase agreement. It's really similar. Again, it's just specific to Georgia for solar energy. And that allows us to sell the kilowatt hours as we do directly to the customer and for them to use. And it also allows us to have that different business model where we don't have to pay capital for the solar, which Jacob mentioned would have made them have to wait to have solar to have the budget for that. So there's no upfront capital costs. Our clients do not pay anything to Cherry Street at all through our design process and our due diligence process until the system is fully commissioned and producing energy. And then through the SEPA with Georgia, we're able to charge that kilowatt hour rate. So that's just the agreement that we signed together is SEPA for the state.
Got it. Thank you. Anyone else with any questions or comments for Jacob or Sarah? Okay, well, I have a question for you, Jacob, from a, business compact standpoint. You talked about your transition to kind of clean energy and utilizing Cherry Street. Can you give us examples of other initiatives or sustainability related activities that you took, on your campus that has been super impactful and helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent some time talking about knowing your operations, right? And your operations informing like not only where your emissions are coming from, but also what kind of opportunities you have available. Right, we talk about emissions in terms of emissions of CO2, but a brewery actually buys CO2 and uses it, right? We have a big tank full of liquid CO2 that we utilize. And so finding ways to reduce the CO2 that we use in process, we find that's very, very beneficial because it reduces costs for us and it has a very direct and tangible impact on our CO2 emissions. So we are actually next week will be 1 year since we have replaced our CO2 in our canning line with nitrogen. And so this has been a process that we took a look at. I kind of came up with the idea in early 2022. Right. The reason that we use carbon dioxide is because beer is a product that does not have a long shelf life. Right. Oxidation, contact of oxygen to beer changes some of the perspective, some of the flavors that are involved. It can make a Tropicalia go from tasting like a Tropicalia to tasting like prune juice over time. And so we put a lot of effort into making sure that Trop tastes like Trop. We don't want you drinking like papery prune juice. So we are pretty obsessive with making sure that those oxygen numbers in package are as low as possible. I propose the idea of replacing carbon dioxide in the seaming process of the cans specifically with nitrogen, conducted a lot of research and actually did some test batch for it. And so that led to approval of a nitrogen generator. So we actually take compressed air from our systems, we feed it through a nitrogen generator, takes all the oxygen, or just about all the oxygen, out. So we have a tank full of nitrogen that we create ourselves on site, that we then feed into our canning line for the seaming process. So if you've bought a beer, Tropicalia beer in cans over the past year or so, there was actually nitrogen like in that little tiny layer in between the beer and the lid. So that enabled us to do a couple of things. Number one, increased resiliency. We had a lot of supply shock issues coming out of the COVID pandemic, including the cost of carbon dioxide increasing by 60, 70%. And so by running nitrogen, we've saved a lot of money, but we've also increased our resiliency. So it was a pretty capital intensive project, but it's dropped our purchased carbon dioxide by about 10% year over year, and that's with just the canning line application.
Wow, that is so cool. I feel like I remember you brought this up when we did the tour for the compact at the brewery. But just kind of hearing that again, yeah, that's a really cool effort. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Mhm.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, well, Sarah and Jacob, if there's something you would like to add on top of what we already discussed, feel free to. Otherwise, we're good to adjourn and everyone can have 19 minutes back. I'm sure everyone's excited about that.
I just want to thank everybody for attending. I spent some time together putting my slides and thinking about what I wanted to say. I've gotten a lot of benefit out of being a member of the Drawdown Georgia Business Compact, and so the opportunity to provide some of my experiences back for y'all is something I look forward to do. So I am glad I had an audience. So thank you guys for attending. It means a lot to me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. Okay, all right. Well, everyone, have a good afternoon. Thank you again, Sarah and Jacob and Manon as well for organizing this. This is great. I hope we can see more collaboration amongst our members, partners, and we're always happy to kind of highlight all these different partnerships. So if there's something that, anyone in the audience would like to highlight in the future, please reach out. We can definitely have a webinar or a workshop or anything of that sort. Thanks again, and hope to cross paths with some of you very soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.